Good evening. This is Mrs. Bloom reading Artemis Fowl by Eoin Colfer. Finally, going to get done with chapter 5, which has been sort of the bane of my existence. I've had to break it up because it is too long. So we have read the first part in which Juliet Butler meets Holly Short, and unfortunately Juliet knows enough so Holly cannot, or Elf cannot escape. And now we're going to join Commander Root, who is going to try and rescue Holly. Commander Root had Holly's locator frequency keyed into his helmet face screen. It took Root longer than expected to reach Dublin. The modern wing rigs were more complicated than he was used to, plus he'd neglected to take refresher courses. At the right altitude, he could almost superimpose the luminous map on his visor over actual Dublin streets below him. Almost. "Foley, you pompous centaur," he barked into his mouthpiece. "Problem, boss man," came the tinny reply. "Problem? You can say that again. When was the last time you updated the Dublin files?" Root could hear sucking noises in his ear. It sounded as though Foley was having lunch. "Sorry, Commander. Just finishing off this carrot. Dublin. Let's see. 1875. Thought so. Place is completely different. Humans have even managed to change the shape of the coastline." Foley was silent for a moment. Root could just imagine him wrestling with a problem. The centaur did not like to be told that any part of his system was out of date. "Okay," he said. "Here's what I'm going to do. We have a scope on a satellite TV bird with a footprint in Ireland." "I see," muttered Root, which was basically a lie. "I'm going to email last week's sweep direct to your visor. Luckily, there's a video card in all the new helmets." "Luckily." "The tricky bit will be to coordinate your flight pattern with the video feed." Root had had enough. "How long, Foley?" 2 minutes, give or take." "Give or take what?" "About 10 years, if my calculations are off." "Better not be off, then. I'll hover till we know." 124 seconds later, Root's black and white footprints faded out, to be replaced by full-color daylight imaging. When Root moved, it moved, and Holly's locator beacon dot moved too. "Impressive," said Root. "What was that, Commander?" "I said impressive," shouted Root. "No need to get a swelled head." The commander heard the sound of a roomful of laughter and realized that Foley had him on speakers. Everyone had heard him complimenting the centaur's work. There'd be no talking to him for at least a month. But it was worth it. This video he was receiving now was bang up to date. If Captain Short was being held in a building, the computer would be able to give him 3D blueprints instantaneously. It was foolproof, except... "Foley, the beacon's gone offshore. What's going on?" "Boat or ship, I'd say, at a guess, sir." Root cursed himself for not thinking of it. They'd be having a laugh in the situation room. Of course it was a ship. Root dropped down a few hundred feet until its shadowy outline loomed through the mist. A whaler, by the looks of it. Technology may have changed over the centuries, but there was still nothing like a harpoon to slaughter the world's largest animal. "Captain Short is in there somewhere, Foley, below decks. What can you give me?" "Nothing, sir. It's not a permanent fixture. By the time we've run her down a registration, it'll be way too late." "What about thermal imaging?" "No, Commander. The hull must be at least 50 years old. Very high lead content. We can't even penetrate the first layer. I'm afraid you're on your own." Root shook his head. "After all the billions we've poured into your department, remind me to slash your budget when I get back." "Yes, sir," came the reply, sullen for once. Foley did not like budget jokes. "Just have the retrieval squad on full alert. I may need them at a moment's notice." "I will, sir." "You better. Over and out." Root was on his own. Truth be told, that was the way he liked it. No science, no uppity centaur whinnying in his ear, just to vary his wits and maybe a bit of magic. Root tilted his polymorph wings, hung in the underside of a fog bank. There was no need to be careful. With the shield activated, he was invisible to the human eye. Even on stealth-sensitive radar, he would do no more than barely perceptible distortion. The commander swooped low to the gunwales. It was an ugly craft, this one. The smell of death and pain lingered in the blood-swabbed decks. Many noble creatures had died here, died and been dissected for a few bars of soap and some heating oil. Root shook his head. Humans were such barbarians. Holly's beeper was flashing urgently now. She was close by, very close. Somewhere within a 200-foot radius was the hopefully still breathing form of Captain Short. But without blueprints, he would have to navigate the belly of this ship unaided. Root alighted gently on the deck, his boots adhering slightly to the mixture of dried soap and blubber coating the steel surface. The craft appeared to be deserted. No sentry on the gangplank, no bosun on the bridge, not a light anywhere. Still no reason to abandon caution. Root knew from bitter experience that humans popped up when you least expected them. Once, when he was helping the retrieval boys scrape some pod wreckage off a tunnel wall, they were spotted by a group of potholing humans. What a mess that had been. Mass hysteria, high-speed chases, group mind wipes, the whole 9 yards. Root shuddered. Nights could be like that could put decades on a ferry. Keeping himself fully shielded, the commander stowed his wings in their sheath, advancing on foot across the deck. There were no other life forms showing up in his screen, but like Foley had said, the hull had a high lead content. Even the paint was lead-based. The entire boat was a floating eco-hazard. The point being that there could be an entire battalion of stormtroopers concealed below decks, and his helmet cam would never pick them up. Very reassuring. Even Holly's beacon was a few shades below par, and that had a micronuclear battery sending out the pulses. Root didn't like this, not one bit. Keep calm, he derided himself, for you're shielded. There's not a human alive that can see you. Root hauled open the first hatch. It swung easily enough. The commander sniffed. The mud people had greased the hinges with whale blubber, so there was no end to their depravity. The corridor was steeped in viscous darkness, so Root flicked down his infrared filter. Okay, so sometimes technology did come in handy, but he wouldn't be telling Foley that. The maze of pipes and grilling before him was immediately illuminated with an unnatural red light. Minutes later, he was regretting even thinking something nice about the Centaur's technology. The infrared filter was messing with his depth perception, and he'd whacked his head on 2 protruding U-bends so far. Still no sign of life, human or fairy. Plenty of animal mostly rodents, and when you're just topping 3 feet in height yourself, a good-sized rat can be a real threat, especially since rats are one of the few breeds that can see straight through a fairy shield. Root unstrapped his blaster and set it to level 3, or medium rare, as the elves in the lock room called it. He sent one of the rats scurrying away with a smoking behind as a warning to the rest. Nothing fatal, just enough to teach him to not look sideways at a fairy in a hurry again. Root picked up his pace. This place was ideal for an ambush. He was virtually blind with his back to the only exit. A recon nightmare. If one of his own men had pulled a stunt like this, he'd have their stripes, but desperate times required judicious risk-taking. That was the essence of command. He ignored several doors to either side, following the beacon. 10 feet now. Steel hatch sealed the corridor, and Captain Short, or her corpse, lay on the other side. Root put his shoulder to the door. It swung open without protest. Bad news. If a live creature were being held captive, the hatch would have been locked. The commander flicked the blaster's power to level 5 and advanced through the hole. His weapon hummed softly. There was enough power to tap now to vaporize a bull elephant with a single blast. No sign of Polly, no sign of anything much. He was in a refrigerated storage bay. Glittering stalactites hung from a maze of piping. Root's breath fanned before him in icy clouds. How would he look to a human, disembodied, breathing? Ah, said a familiar voice. We have a visitor. Root dropped to one knee, leveling the handgun at the source. Come to rescue your missing officer, no doubt. The commander blinked, a bead of sweat from his eye. Sweat? At this temperature? Well, I'm afraid you've come to the wrong place. The voice was tinny, artificial amplified. Root checked his locator for life signs. There were none. Not at this chamber, anyway. He was being monitored somehow. What was a camera here? Somewhere, concealed in the maze of overhead piping that could penetrate the fairy shield? Where are you? Show yourself. The human chuckled. It echoed unnaturally around the vast hold. No, not yet, my fairy friend, but soon enough. And believe me, when I do, you'll wish I hadn't. Root followed the voice. Keep the human talking. What do you want? What do I want? Again. You will know soon enough. There was a low crate in the center of the hold. On it sat an attaché case. The case was open. Why bring me here at all? Root poked the case with his pistol. Nothing happened. I brought you here for a demonstration. The commander leaned over the open container. Inside, in snug foam packing, were a flat vacuum-packed package and a triple-band VHF transmitter. Resting on top was Holly's locator. Root groaned. Holly wouldn't have willingly given up her equipment. No Lep would. What sort of demonstration, you demented freak? Again that cold chuckle. A demonstration of my utter commitment to my goal. Root should have started to worry about his own health then, but he was too busy worrying about Holly's. If you've harmed one tip of my officer's pointy ears... Your officer? Oh, we have management. How privileged. All the better to make my point. Alarm bells went off in Root's head. Your point? The voice emanating from the aluminum speaker grid was serious as a nuclear winter. My point, little ferryman, is that I am not someone to be trifled with. Now, if you would please observe the package. The commander duly observed it was nondescript enough shape, flat like a slab of putty, or... Oh no. Beneath the sealant, a red light flicked on. Fly, little fairy, said the voice, and tell your friends Artemis Fowl II says hello. Beside the red light, green symbols began to click through a routine. Root recognized them from his human studies class back at the academy. They were numbers going backward, a countdown. "Derv it!" growled Root. There's no point in translating the word, as it would have to be censored. He fled and turned and went down the corridor, Artemis Fowl mocking tones carrying down the metal funnel. 3, said the human. 2, "Derv it!" repeated Root. The corridor seemed much longer now. A sliver of starry sky peeked through the wedge of open door. Root activated his wings. This would take some fancy flying. The hummingbird span was barely narrower than a ship's corridor. 1. Sparks flew through the electronic wings as they scraped the protruding pipe. Root cartwheeled, righted himself at Mach 1. 0, said the voice. Boom. Inside the vacuum package, a detonator sparked, igniting a kilogram of pure semtex. The white-hot reaction devoured the surrounding oxygen in a nanosecond and surged down the path of least resistance, which was, of course, immediately after Lep Commander Root. Root dropped his visor, opening the throttle to maximum. The door was just a few feet away. It was just a matter of which reached it first, the ferry or the fireball. He made it, barely. He could feel the explosion rattling his torso as he threw himself into a reverse loop. Flames latched onto his jumpsuit, licking along his legs. Root continued his maneuver, crashing directly into the water. He broke the surface, swearing. Above him, the whaler had been totally consumed by noxious flames. "Commander," came a voice in his earpiece. It was Foley. He was back in range. "Commander, what's your status?" Root lifted free of the water's grip. "My status, Foley, is extremely annoyed. Get on your computer. I want everything to know there is to know about Artemis Fowl, and I want to know it before I get back to base." "Yes, Commander, right away." No wisecrack. Even Foley realized this was not the time. Root hovered at 300 yards. Below him, the blazing whaler drew emergency vehicles like moths to light. He dusted charred threads from his elbows. There was going to be a reckoning for this Artemis Fowl, he vowed. Count on it. And there, finally, ends Chapter 5. We'll read some more tomorrow. Have a good evening.